In life, we've probably often asked ourselves why we're always tired, constantly competing, and never feel content or peaceful. We look at others and see them wealthier, more beautiful, more successful. And in that moment, we lose the joy that was inherently present in our own lives. Mastering oneself isn't about suppression. It's not about forcing oneself to be perfect in all emotions, but rather learning to understand oneself, to understand the emotions that arise, and then regulating them so as not to be swept away by waves of feeling. When we can look back at ourselves with mindfulness, that's when we take the first steps on the path to mastering our lives. The Buddha once taught that the root of suffering lies not in circumstances, but in how we perceive and cling to those circumstances. It's like holding a glass of water. If you hold it lightly, there's no burden. But if you keep holding it for a long time, you'll feel tired, even sore. Life is the same. If we constantly hold on to comparisons, competition, or suffering in our hearts, we are the ones who make ourselves more miserable. The Lin Buddhist channel once heard a story about a farmer in the countryside. He spent his entire life working in the fields, and his life wasn't abundant. Yet he always had a gentle smile, and his eyes radiated serenity. Someone asked why he wasn't sad when he saw others building big houses or buying fancy cars. The farmer just smiled and said, "They have their blessings, and I have mine. I'm happy when my seeds sprout, and having enough to eat with my wife and children is enough." Isn't that simplicity proof of self-mastery? When we stop comparing ourselves to others, we can truly see the beauty around us, like golden rice fields swaying in the wind, like birds singing at dawn, or dewdrops glistening on leaves. These are all gifts of life. But if we constantly focus on what's lacking and keep comparing, we'll miss everything. True happiness isn't about how much we have, but about how deeply we can feel. So the first step to learning self-control is to practice breathing and recognizing emotions. When comparison or envy arises, stop. Take a deep breath, exhale slowly, and smile at yourself. In just a few brief seconds, you'll feel your heart settle. From there, you'll understand that happiness doesn't need to be sought far away. It's always present in every breath, every present moment. Having been through countless changes, we eventually realize that life is inherently fragile and impermanent. No one knows what tomorrow will bring. Instead of being lost in comparison, learn to be grateful and cherish every moment you have. When you master yourself, you'll no longer be swept away by external storms. You become liberated, living peacefully. And it's in that peacefulness that true happiness resides. Have you ever felt your peace disturbed just because of someone's unintentional remark? Sometimes, just a glance or a small action is enough to make us angry, only to sit back later and feel our hearts shattered. Anger is an emotion everyone has. It comes quickly, like a strong wind blowing through a rice field, bending the stalks. But if we let that anger sweep us away, it's like a fierce wind turning into a storm that devastates the entire harvest. People often think that expressing all emotions is living authentically. But in reality, not controlling your emotions means handing over the key to your life to external factors. The Buddha once taught that when a single thought of anger arises, millions of karmic doors open. Hatred is like a fire. it can burn away love, burn away happiness, burn away everything we've painstakingly built. If a person knows how to control their emotions, how to guard their mind, and not be carried away by that fire, then that person holds the greatest power, the power of self-mastery. Because anger is an instinct, but maintaining calm is the true strength of character. There was a boy with a very hot temper. Every time he got angry, he would run to the wooden fence behind his house and hammer a nail into it with all his might. At first, the fence was full of nails. But over time, the boy learned to control himself. Each time he practiced patience, he removed a nail. On the last day, he removed all of them. His father led him to the fence and said, "Do you see? The nails are gone, but the scars remain. Your angry words are the same. They can be retracted with an apology, but the wound in another person's heart will never disappear." That story serves as a mirror, helping us understand that even fleeting anger can leave long-lasting scars on the soul. In life, many people lose friendships, love, or even family happiness just because of a fit of angry words. There are parents who, in a fit of rage, utter words that deeply hurt their children, only to regret it for the rest of their lives. There are wives and husbands who, in a moment of lacking self-control, lose each other's trust. Words, if chosen carefully, can be like cool water soothing the fire in one's heart. But if uttered in anger, they can be a blade that cuts through years of nurtured love. We can imagine a morning in the countryside. As the sun rises, birds chirp to each other in the tree line. The gentle wind rustles through the bamboo grove. That scene is inherently peaceful. But if a single shout echoes, the space suddenly becomes chaotic. The human mind is similar. It can naturally be as calm as an autumn lake, but just one angry stone thrown into it will disturb the surface, sending ripples that spread indefinitely. Therefore, learning mindful breathing is learning to keep the mind's lake from being stirred up. A simple but effective exercise is, when anger arises, stop, take a deep breath, and exhale slowly. In that moment, you can place your hand on your chest to feel your racing heartbeat, then softly tell yourself, "I know I am angry." Just recognizing it like that will lessen anger's power. It's like a crying child. Simply being recognized and held will gradually quiet them. Emotions are the same. When they are seen and understood, they are no longer as intense as before. There was a worker I once met. He toiled laboriously every day for little pay. His life was inherently full of hardship. Yet, he rarely lost his temper with his wife and children. When asked his secret, he smiled gently and said, "Back then, I used to be very irritable, always complaining about everything when I came home. One day, seeing my youngest child fearfully cowering in a corner, I felt immense pity. From then on, I practiced silence. Whenever I got angry, I would go out onto the porch, sit, and breathe, looking at the sky and the earth. After breathing for a while, I found I had nothing left to be angry about." That simple story reminds us that sometimes, with just a little patience and a brief moment of quiet, we can preserve an entire home. The Buddha taught that hatred cannot be dispelled by hatred. Only love can conquer hatred. A person who knows how to control their emotions isn't someone who never gets angry, but someone who knows how to transform anger into the energy of understanding, and love. When we are angry, try to put ourselves in the other person's shoes. Try to imagine their suffering. Perhaps they speak harsh words because they themselves are in pain. Perhaps they hurt us because their own hearts are filled with many unhealed wounds. Seeing it this way, our hearts will gradually soften. In mindfulness practice, there is a method called silence in anger. It's not silence for suppression, but silence to give the mind space to breathe. When we are silent, we don't let ignorant words escape like arrows that wound others. When we are silent, we preserve a space of peace for both ourselves and others. There are families that become places full of shouting simply because no one is willing to be silent. And there are families that preserve their warmth and peace thanks to just one person who knows how to be silent. Controlling emotions is the root of inner freedom. When we are no longer controlled by anger, we will feel our hearts lighten, like a sail filled with wind, drifting freely on the open sea. Those with inner freedom are truly happy because they are not bound by circumstances or by others. They know what they want, what they need, and most importantly, they know how to live with love. If each of us practices pausing, breathing mindfully, and speaking kindly instead of angrily, then happiness will no longer be a distant dream. It exists right in every breath, in the gentle look we share, in the warm embrace we hold for each other. Anger can arise at any moment, but we always have the right to choose how to react. And when we choose love instead of anger, we are sowing seeds of peace for both ourselves and others. Finally, the most important thing is to remember that life is impermanent. An angry word can break a beautiful connection, and once a connection is broken, it's hard to mend. Instead of letting anger destroy happiness, use compassion to preserve it. Practice looking at your loved ones with grateful eyes, because no one is sure they will still be by your side tomorrow. Controlling emotions isn't just about maintaining inner peace, but also about preserving the precious connections that life bestows upon us. And when we can do that, we truly touch inner freedom. We touch true happiness. Perhaps in life, what hurts us most isn't external conflicts, but the wounds inflicted by our own loved ones within the family. We might be patient with strangers, but easily utter harsh words to our spouses, children, and parents. Forgiveness and compassion towards family members can sometimes be the hardest lesson, because they are the closest to us, and also the ones who bear the brunt of our negative emotions. But it is precisely within the family that compassion becomes the bridge to preserve and mend love. Without compassion, a family becomes merely a place filled with scars. The Buddha once taught that hatred cannot conquer hatred. Only compassion can conquer hatred. That is an eternal truth. When we are angry, when we believe we are right, and the other person is wrong, it's easy to let our ego dominate. But consider whether it's worth it to hurt the very people who have been with us through so many ups and downs. Compassion isn't weakness, but strength. It's the strength of someone who knows how to restrain themselves, how to prioritize familial love over their ego. A moment of patience leads to peace. That folk saying isn't just common advice, but a truth for life, for those who value family happiness. There's an old story about two brothers living with their elderly parents in a small village. The older brother had a hot temper and frequently argued. One time, in a fit of anger, he raised his voice at his father. The father remained silent, said nothing, and quietly went into his room. Afterward, he wrote the proverb, "A moment of patience leads to peace," on a piece of paper, and left it on the table. When his anger subsided, the brother read it and burst into tears. He realized that his father's patience wasn't weakness, but an immense love to preserve their home. From then on, he learned compassion, realizing how much pain words once uttered could inflict on loved ones. In modern life, we often see parents complaining about their children. Spouses resent each other, and siblings turn their backs on each other over money. But there are also countless families that preserve happiness through a single word: patience. There are wives who are compassionate toward their husbands' shortcomings. There are husbands who are compassionate toward their wives' weaknesses. There are parents who are compassionate toward their children's mistakes. It is this compassion that creates the strength to keep families connected. The Zen Buddhist channel once knew a touching story about a father and his wayward son. When he was young, the son was led astray by bad friends and indulged in hedonistic pleasures. Gambling brought much notoriety to the family. Neighbors all scorned them, and his mother cried endless tears. Yet, instead of scolding or punishing, the father always opened his arms. He would often sit beside his son, gently advising him, "If you make a mistake, fix it. The important thing is to come back. No matter what you do, your parents will still love you." As time passed, those words gradually sank into the son's heart. One day, after experiencing enough pain and failure, the son returned, abandoned his reckless ways, worked diligently, and cared for his parents. Thanks to his father's compassion, the son found himself again. Compassion doesn't mean condoning wrongdoing, but rather opening a path for others to turn back. Like a river that continues to flow when it encounters trash, it doesn't hold on to the impurity in its depths, but dissolves and carries it away, restoring its purity. People with compassionate hearts are the same. They don't deny mistakes, but don't let them become permanent wounds. They give others a chance to start over. There was a farmer in central Vietnam I once met. He told me that during difficult years, his eldest son left home, followed his friends, leaving his elderly parents and younger siblings behind. Many people told him he should disown his son, pretending he no longer existed, to save face. But the farmer just smiled and said, "Children make mistakes sometimes. How can parents abandon their child?" Many years later, that son returned to apologize to his parents. It was that unconditional love that helped their family reunite despite enduring countless storms. After hearing the story, I realized that true compassion is the deepest healing power. In mindfulness practice, compassion is looking at others with eyes of understanding. When you see someone do something wrong, instead of criticizing, try asking yourself how much suffering they must have endured to lead to that action. Only by seeing another person's suffering can we open our hearts to forgive. This not only benefits the other person, but also frees us from resentment. Because when we are angry with someone, we are the first to suffer. The heart is burned, the mind restless. When we are compassionate, we restore peace to ourselves. The exercise for a compassionate heart can start with the smallest things. When someone in your family does something you dislike, instead of reacting immediately, try breathing slowly, smiling, and thinking that you love them more than their mistake. When you hear an unpleasant remark, practice listening with your heart instead of just with your ego. Compassion isn't always easy, but each time we practice it, we plant another seed of love in our hearts. Looking back, we see that life is short. So many loved ones have passed, leaving behind sorrow for those who remain. At that moment, the anger and blame that once bothered us suddenly become meaningless. The only thing that remains is the love we had time to give each other. Life is impermanent. We don't know who will still be here tomorrow and who will be gone. So why don't we choose compassion today so we don't have regrets later? Compassion is holding loved ones in your arms, even if they make mistakes. Compassion is preserving happiness, even if sometimes you have to endure disadvantages. Compassion doesn't make us weak. On the contrary, it makes us strong. Because only a truly resilient heart can extend compassion. And when we know how to be compassionate, we not only keep our loved ones, but also preserve peace for our own souls. Beneath the vast scale, people often tirelessly chase after the two words: success. In today's society, it seems we have unintentionally allowed others to define what success is and what happiness is. Some people believe that only by having big houses, luxury cars, status, and power can one be called successful. Others believe that one must be famous and praised by the world to be happy. But sometimes, these very metrics become invisible prisons that confine us, preventing our souls from ever being truly at ease. Because the more one wants to achieve, and the more one worries about holding on to what one already has, the more suffering and restlessness one experiences. When stepping into a quiet night, hearing the wind gently blow through the bamboo grove, we suddenly understand that success cannot be measured solely by material things. It's like a gentle breeze. You can feel it, but not grasp it. Only when we open our hearts and let go of comparisons and competition can we truly feel it. The Buddha once taught that everything in life is impermanent. If we place our happiness in things that are easily lost, sooner or later, we will suffer. But if we know contentment, living with a peaceful mind, happiness is always present in every breath. There's a short story often told as a simple illustration. A successful businessman, on a visit back to his hometown, met a farmer. The farmer was poor. His sleeves still smelled of earth, but a smile always bloomed on his lips. After a day of labor, he sat on his porch, sipping tea and singing. The businessman, surprised, asked, "You don't have much money or great assets. How can you look so happy?" The farmer replied with peaceful eyes, "I have my family gathered around, a hot meal, a good night's sleep, and I see the sun rise in the morning. That's enough. Happiness doesn't have to be found far away." That simple answer left the businessman speechless. A deep uneasiness arose in his heart, for he realized that after so many years of striving, he had a lot of money, but couldn't even get a peaceful night's sleep. Life is inherently like a calm lake. If we disturb it with ambition and desire, the water will churn, distorting all reflections. But if we maintain a peaceful mind, the clear lake will reflect the entire sky. If we let society define success, we will forever chase a shadow. But true success is when our mind is at peace, our heart is content, and we live true to our authentic values. Those who know contentment are rich. Those with endless desires are poor. The Buddha once said, "One who is content, though lying on the ground, still finds joy. One who is not content, though in heaven, still feels restless." That saying is like a lamp illuminating the path back to truth. Many times, we think that just a little more, achieving a higher position, buying a bigger house, will make us happier. But the truth is, once achieved, our hearts desire even more, like an empty well. It is precisely that comparing mind that causes us suffering. Compared to someone richer, we feel sad, but compared to someone poorer, we don't feel happy. Ultimately, happiness is lost simply because we look outward instead of inward. If one day you sit under a tree, breathe deeply, and listen to the sound of falling leaves, you'll realize that happiness isn't far away after all. It lies in the smile of your parents, in the eyes of an innocent child, in the warmth of a home. It lies in every simple meal, in the moment you appreciate the life unfolding. When you understand this, you'll see that success isn't about having more than anyone else, but about living true to your own heart, not letting society sweep you away. Some people toil their entire lives, only to realize in the end that they were just chasing an illusory shadow. But others, even in a small garden planting a few rows of vegetables, can find serenity. They don't need much, but possess inner fulfillment. What is called true success is inner freedom. When we are not dependent on others' opinions, when we are no longer caught in the whirlwind of comparison, when we let go of our arrogant ego, only then do we see the vastness of our soul. If you're tired from life's pressures, try to stop. Let go of some of the burdens society imposes. Ask yourself, what truly brings me peace? Then you'll realize the answer lies in simplicity itself. Instead of constantly running, try sitting still, observing a blooming flower, listening to birds sing. Every breath can become a source of peace if you know how to pause. Happiness doesn't come from comparison, nor from fleeting titles. It is the result of using your heart to feel. When you drink a cool glass of water and taste nature's sweetness, when you sit beside a loved one and feel warmth in your heart, when you walk through a windy field and feel at peace, that is happiness. True success doesn't lie externally, but is an inward journey, returning to the mind's inherent stillness. In life, each of us can become a happy farmer, like in that story. Not because we are poor or rich, but because we know how to live peacefully. Peace doesn't come from external conditions, but from how we view life itself, when we know how to stop and appreciate what we have. When we know how to smile at the present moment, then success and happiness are already within reach. Dear friend, don't let society define success for you. Don't let the eyes of others bind you in an endless race. Write your own definition of happiness with the sincerity of your heart. Because ultimately, this life is too short. Fame and glory will eventually fade away with the wind. Only inner peace will remain with you until the very end. Success isn't about climbing the highest mountain, but about finding peace in every step of life's journey. And when we understand this, we truly master our lives, realizing that happiness has never left us. We just need to open our hearts to recognize it. Perhaps in life, no one has gone through it without at least once fleetingly feeling comparison or envy. When we see a friend praised, a colleague promoted, or a neighbor buy a nicer new house, our minds suddenly stir. We wonder why they have it, and we don't. That tiny seed called envy, if not recognized, will gradually grow into a thorny forest in our hearts, scratching our souls and making us forever restless. The Buddha once taught that the envious mind is one of the roots that keeps people far from peace because it clouds the mind, making it no longer clear-sighted enough to see one's own path. When the mind is covered by comparison, we no longer see the beauty of life, nor do we open our hearts to embrace the good opportunities coming our way. But in reality, if we know how to transform envy into admiration, life will change. Admiration is a benevolent and pure gaze. When we see others succeed, we rejoice for them. It's like looking at a blooming flower. We don't think it blooms just for us, but simply see that the world is more beautiful. Similarly, when standing by the seashore, we don't need to own the entire ocean to enjoy the sound of the waves. Happiness is sometimes simple, just knowing how to admire the good and beautiful in others, to remind ourselves to learn and reflect. I remember a small but very real story. There were two friends who were in the same high school class. One was bright and diligent, later passed the entrance exam to a prestigious university, got a stable job, and had a successful career. The other was an average student, and his life was more struggling. Every time he heard about his friend's success, he felt a pang in his heart, partly self-doubt, partly self-pity. He rarely congratulated his friend and even avoided meeting him. In his heart, he harbored the heavy thought that fate was unfair. Why did the other person receive more luck, despite starting from the same point? As time passed, his envious mind made him live a secluded and weary life. Until one day, in a casual conversation, he heard his friend recount that those successes also came from countless sleepless nights, from relentless effort, from unseen tears. It was then that he realized others' achievements didn't just fall from the sky. They were the result of effort, choices, and perseverance. And then he changed his perspective. Instead of envy, he began to admire his friend. He observed and learned how his friend worked, how he maintained discipline, how he treated others. Gradually, his life changed. He didn't become the most successful person, but in his heart, he found peace, motivation to continue, and also joy in seeing others succeed. That story reminds us that envy doesn't help us grow. It only pulls us down. But admiration is different. It lifts us up. When we admire someone, we learn good things. We gain more faith that people can rise. It's like one lamp lighting another. The light doesn't diminish, but spreads even more. In daily life, how many times do we let our minds fall into the trap of comparison? A farmer sighs when seeing a neighbor's rice field greener. A worker feels disheartened when a colleague receives a bigger bonus. A woman feels sad when her peers are loved more by their husbands. But if we look closely, we'll see that everyone has their own blessings, their own karma. What we see is only the surface. Inside, everyone has difficulties and challenges that not everyone perceives. So instead of comparing, let's learn to appreciate what we have and admire the good in others, to serve as a mirror for ourselves. The Buddha taught that a joyful heart in the face of others' success also plants blessings for oneself. When we rejoice in the happiness of others, we are watering the seed of peace in our own hearts. Conversely, when we nurture envy, we are the ones drinking poison. First, the person we envy may not be affected at all, but we ourselves are hurt, our minds restless. We suffer from insomnia and fatigue. So how do we transform an envious mind into admiration? First, we need to practice looking at ourselves. Every time we see someone succeed, instead of thinking why they have it and we don't, let's ask ourselves what we can learn from them. That attitude changes everything. Next, we need to practice meditation, sitting still, breathing and smiling, reminding ourselves that happiness lies not in comparison, but in contentment and gratitude. We can also write down what we admire in others, using it as a mirror to remind ourselves to cultivate those qualities. And most importantly, we need to cultivate compassion, knowing that everyone is on their own journey. Everyone has joys and sorrows, and no one is perfectly complete. Once again, imagine if we live with an envious mind. Each day will be like walking on a thorny path, every step hurting. But if we replace that mind with admiration, that path becomes a small lane, shaded by trees, with birds singing, cool breezes, and lighter steps. Others' success doesn't diminish us. On the contrary, it opens up the belief that we too can achieve. Reflecting, life is impermanent. Success eventually fades, wealth eventually perishes, fame eventually passes. What remains is the soul. Are we lighthearted or not? If we embrace envy throughout life, we only inflict suffering upon ourselves. But if we know admiration, if we know joy, we will live more freely, more happily. Admiration to learn, to reflect, to grow. That is the path to peace. So from today, every time you see someone succeed, try to smile. Smile to offer blessings. Smile to remind yourself that there's another good thing in this world. And in that moment, you are also planting a seed of peace in your heart. Then that seed will sprout and blossom in your own life. This universe is vast. Everyone has their own place, their own sky. There's no need to compete for others' light, for the sun doesn't need to compete with the stars. Just shine with your own light. And who knows, when you learn to admire others with all your heart, you'll realize that happiness has never been far away. It's right in how you see life, in every peaceful breath, in every glance full of goodwill and appreciation for this life. Have you ever wondered why, amidst so much noise, we crave a moment of peace? There are days when we are tired of work, of making a living, of life's comparisons and competitions, and then we ask ourselves where true refuge lies. Many people think that only by leaving the city, going up high mountains, or into deep temples, can one find serenity. However, the Buddha once taught that peace doesn't lie in external circumstances, but within our own minds. When the mind is still filled with greed, anger, and delusion, even if you sit in the deepest forest, you cannot find stillness. But if a person knows how to return to their breath, how to let go of the burdens in their heart, then even in the bustling marketplace of life, they can still be at peace. There's an old story about a man who spent his whole life wandering in search of something. He believed that peace lay in some distant place he had never set foot in. Hearing people speak of a famous Zen master on a mountain, he immediately sought him out for guidance. Standing before the Zen master, he honestly said, "Master, I wish you would teach me how to find peace. I have traveled many places, done many things, but my heart remains restless, and my troubles never cease." The Zen master smiled gently, gave him a small mat, and said, "Sit down, close your eyes, breathe deeply, and listen to your heartbeat. You don't need to go anywhere far. You don't need to search outside. Just returning to yourself is enough." The man listened, though doubt lingered in his heart. He sat there, focusing on each breath, initially feeling uncomfortable, his mind racing with all sorts of thoughts. But then, day by day, stillness gradually appeared. He realized that he had never truly lived in the present moment, always letting his mind chase after things yet to come, or memories of the past. After just a few days of practice, he realized that peace was not in deep mountains, not in grand temples, but right within his own mind. And from then on, he learned to sit with himself, allowing his heart to settle like a still lake. That story is simple, but contains a profound lesson. Many times, we think that to find serenity, we must change our circumstances, seek out sacred places, or cut off all connections. But the Buddha taught that if the mind is not at peace, then anywhere is restless. If the mind is at peace, then every place is a haven of peace. Purity doesn't come from mountain scenery or the sound of temple bells, but from knowing how to let go of greed, to stop anger, to illuminate delusion. When those three fires are extinguished, the light of wisdom will naturally manifest, and that is truly the source of peace. In modern life, we are often too busy, too worried about the future, too tormented by the past. Some people sit in the middle of a meeting, but their minds are preoccupied with unpaid debts. Some eat a meal, but their hearts are still anxious about tomorrow. The body is here, but the mind wanders everywhere. It is this distraction that prevents us from ever truly being at peace. When our breath is hurried, when our heart is heavy, the whole world seems narrow and gloomy. But if we just stop, take a deep breath, feel the cool air entering our lungs, and then exhale slowly, we will find a quiet space opening within us. That quiet space, though brief, contains rejuvenation, because that is the moment we are truly present. A rural mother I once met also shared that her life was a year-round struggle with the fields and the burden of raising children. She often found herself irritable and prone to anger, especially when her children did something wrong. One day, someone in the village taught her how to sit still and breathe. At first, she thought it was useless, but out of curiosity, she tried it. Every morning before going to the fields, she would sit on her porch, close her eyes, and breathe in and out very slowly. After just a few minutes of this, she noticed her heart felt lighter, and her anger subsided. Even when doing heavy work in the fields, she felt more serene. After a while, she became gentler, no longer irritable as before, and her children also felt happier. It all began with just a few peaceful breaths that she found right within her own mind. Meditation and breath are the doors that lead us back. Meditation isn't about sitting for a long time, forcing oneself not to think. Meditation is simply knowing you are breathing, knowing you are living in the present moment. When you wash dishes, know that you are washing dishes. Feel the warm water on your hands. Hear the trickling sound of the water. When you eat rice, know that you are eating rice, chewing slowly, savoring the flavor of each grain. These seemingly small things are meditation. And meditation helps us listen to the stillness right within our daily lives. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha once taught, a peaceful mind, pure speech, and calm actions. That is the path to peace and happiness. When our mind is no longer agitated by greed, anger, or ignorance, then every word and action will become gentle. And when we act with that stillness, not only do we find peace, but those around us also feel that peace spreading. You might be tired. You might be caught in endless comparisons and competitions, but please try just once. Let everything go. Close your eyes, place your hand on your chest, and breathe slowly. You'll realize that everything external is merely temporary. Only the stillness within your mind is a steadfast refuge. When you know how to return to yourself, you will no longer have to run elsewhere to seek peace, because you already carry it within your heart. Where is purity? It is not in luxury, not in deep forests, nor in long journeys. Purity is when we learn to listen to our own minds, when we clearly see impermanence, know how to cherish the present moment, and do not let greed, anger, or delusion control us. Everyone can practice this, regardless of wealth or poverty, intellect or labor. Just one mindful breath, one moment of stopping, and we have begun the journey back to inner purity. Remember that the world is inherently noisy, and life is inherently volatile. If we constantly seek peace from the outside, we will never reach it. Only when we turn inward and sit with ourselves do we understand that true happiness doesn't come from comparison or from what others have, but from knowing how to feel with a tranquil heart. And in that stillness, we realize that this life is inherently complete. We just need to open our hearts to see it. Perhaps deep down in everyone's heart, we've all, at least once, quietly wondered why some people, though poor, always radiate a strange light that makes others feel comfortable and peaceful just by being near them. That light doesn't come from wealth, nor from fame, but from the depths of their hearts. That is benevolence. A person with benevolence in their heart brings warmth to life wherever they go, whatever the circumstances. Benevolence is like a cool breeze on a sweltering summer afternoon, like a drop of fresh water falling on barren land, gradually softening everything around it and filling it with life. But in the rhythm of modern life, sometimes we forget the value of benevolence. We constantly compare, calculate, and compete to the point where our hearts gradually wither without us realizing it. Sometimes an unintentional remark can hurt someone nearby. Sometimes, for a small, immediate gain, we miss an opportunity to help someone. Then, gradually, we find our lives becoming heavy, full of loss and tension. However, if one day we know how to stop, open our hearts, and practice living with benevolence, we will witness something miraculous. Benevolence is the quietest and most enduring strength. It not only saves others, but also saves ourselves. The Buddha once taught that a person with a compassionate heart, even if only a single thought of compassion arises, creates immeasurable blessings. That teaching is gentle, yet profoundly deep. Compassion and benevolence are not something distant or lofty. It can simply be a look full of empathy, a soft word, a hand extended when seeing someone stumble. Every such small act, if it comes from a sincere heart, has a more powerful ripple effect than even lines of sermons. The Lin Ung Buddhist channel recalls a story from a poor countryside. There was a woman who toiled year-round in the fields and carried goods to the market. Her life was inherently difficult. Her husband died early, and she raised her child alone. Life was full of hardship, but she remained resilient. One morning, as she went to the market early to sell vegetables, she heard faint crying from a corner of the village communal house. Approaching, she was startled to see an abandoned infant wrapped in an old, torn blanket. The child's eyes were tear-filled, its pale face trembling in the cold morning dew. In that moment, the poor woman fell silent. Everyone thought someone like her had enough to worry about with herself and her child. Who would have the strength to care for another life? But her heart wouldn't allow her to turn away. She picked up the child and held it to her chest, transferring her warmth to it. She brought it back to her poor home, which had nothing but a few dented pots and an old, creaky bed. The neighbors initially shook their heads, calling her foolish. But then, witnessing how she cared for the child, everyone silently admired her. A miracle happened. People in the village began bringing her rice, milk, and old clothes to share. Some, who had been indifferent, were also moved. The child grew up surrounded by her love and that of the entire community. She remained poor and still had to toil. But her eyes shone brighter. Her smile was more radiant. Her life seemed to change simply because of one act of benevolence. That story serves as a vivid testament to the truth the Buddha once taught. Compassion does not discriminate between rich and poor. Compassion does not choose between noble and humble. Once a compassionate heart arises, blessings are sown. That poor woman not only saved a child's life, but also revived kindness in an entire community. And most of all, she saved her own heart, transforming the suffering of poverty into a source of joy and peace. Someone asked, "Can benevolence be taken advantage of? Does benevolence make us suffer losses?" The answer is, possibly. In life, not every act of benevolence is immediately repaid with good. Sometimes we help others, and they forget us, or even harm us in return. But remember, benevolence is not an exchange. It is a practice, a light within our hearts. When we sow seeds of benevolence, even if we don't see sprouts today or leaves tomorrow, one day flowers will bloom. And in the very moment we live benevolently, we liberate ourselves from the selfishness and narrow-mindedness that imprisons the heart. If your heart is burdened with much pain and resentment, I advise you to try living a little more benevolently. Don't think of benevolence as something grand. Just listen to your loved ones more. Be more patient with their mistakes. Or simply say a kind word to a vendor at the market. You'll feel your heart soften. Then, the energy within you will change. Your face will glow brighter. Your sleep will be deeper. That's the first reward benevolence gives you. In meditation, there is a beautiful practice called loving kindness meditation. We sit down, breathe deeply, and silently send loving energy to ourselves, then to our loved ones, and gradually extend it to strangers, even to those who have hurt us. When practiced this way, our hearts open, and in that open space, happiness appears. It's a happiness that doesn't come from comparison, requires no conditions, but simply a heart that knows how to feel. Imagine if in a family everyone lived more benevolently, knowing how to yield and share, how warm the atmosphere in the home would be. If in a village people knew how to help each other, how peaceful would the whole village be? And if in society everyone cultivated a benevolent heart, this world would surely be very different. But before waiting for the whole world to change, start with yourself. Even a small action from you can be the origin of a spreading wave of love. Benevolence isn't just about giving. It's also about receiving. When you open your heart, you'll find you gain more than you lose. You gain lightness, peace, and connection. And most importantly, you receive a better, more steadfast version of yourself. For benevolence is strength, the strength of the heart, the strength to overcome life's storms. So, don't be afraid of being weak when you are benevolent. On the contrary, only truly strong people dare to live benevolently, because they understand that hatred never extinguishes hatred. Only love can do that. Remember the Buddha's words: to conquer oneself is a greater task than conquering thousands in battle. To conquer oneself with self-compassion is the greatest victory. If today you are sad or tired, try sitting down, breathing deeply, and silently telling yourself, "I choose to live benevolently." When you say that, you plant a new seed in your heart, and that seed, over time, will grow, becoming a shade that shelters both you and those around you. This life is short. We cannot take money or fame with us when we leave this realm. The only thing that remains is the imprint we leave in the hearts of others. If that is the imprint of benevolence, then even after we are long gone, the fragrance of that kindness will continue to spread. So why don't we choose to live benevolently, starting today? Benevolence is a fire that first warms oneself, then others. When we light that fire, the darkness in our hearts naturally dissipates. And then you will find yourself more liberated, more peaceful, more joyful. Let a benevolent heart guide you, and you will realize that happiness doesn't come from comparison, but from a heart that knows how to love and feel. There are days when we sit silently in a small room, watching the rain fall outside the porch, and an indescribable sadness suddenly arises in our hearts. So many things we want to hold on to grasp, but ultimately, they are beyond our reach. There are people, there are things we thought would be with us forever, but then they vanish like clouds in the sky. In that moment, we suddenly understand that this life is inherently impermanent. What belongs to us will stay. What does not belong to us, no matter how hard we try to hold on to it, will eventually leave. The ancients once said, in life, one must know how to adapt to circumstances. But adapting to circumstances doesn't mean passively drifting with fate, letting life carry you away. Adapting to circumstances means living wholeheartedly, fulfilling our duties, upholding loyalty and affection, and then knowing when to let go. When a connection has ended, that is the wisdom of a seasoned soul who has deeply absorbed the meaning of impermanence in every breath. There's a story that, whenever I recall it, I feel my heart settle. In a small village by the river, there was a man who treasured an antique ceramic vase left to him by his grandfather. The vase was not merely a decorative item in his home, but it encapsulated affection, memories, and pride in his ancestors. He meticulously cared for it every day, cleaning it thoroughly, cherishing it like a precious treasure. But then, by accident, the vase fell onto the hard ground and shattered into pieces. The man sat there in a daze, sorrowful, tormented, endlessly. He regretted it, blamed himself for his carelessness, and blamed unfair fate. Every night he lay awake, staring at the empty space where the vase once stood, his heart aching endlessly. Seeing his friend in such a state, a kind friend approached and gently said, "The vase is broken. Its time with you has ended. No matter how long you hold on to this sorrow, the vase cannot be whole again. Don't let memories bind you. Let go to welcome new things, because who knows, there might be other joys waiting ahead." Those words were like a cool, refreshing breeze blowing into the man's burning soul. Little by little, he learned to calm his mind and accept the loss. He put the remaining ceramic pieces into a small box as a memento and began to open his heart to new things. One morning, as sunlight streamed through the window, he felt his heart lighten, realizing that the most precious thing was not the vase itself, but the love his grandfather had left behind, which would always be in his heart. Something nothing could ever take away. That story is simple, yet it holds a great lesson. We often cling so tightly to what we cherish that we inflict suffering upon ourselves when those things depart. We forget that nothing in this world lasts forever. Human existence, possessions, fame, even love, all are like flowers that bloom then wither, like the moon that waxes then wanes. The Buddha once taught that all conditioned phenomena are impermanent, arising and ceasing, changing in every moment. Contemplate this clearly, so that the mind no longer clings. If we understand the principle of impermanence, we will know how to appreciate what we have while we have it, and how to smile when we must let go. Adapting to circumstances isn't giving up or letting life take its course. Adapting to circumstances is putting your whole heart into everything you do, but not forcing the outcome. Like a farmer sowing rice seeds in his field, he plows, sows, waters, weeds, doing his utmost. But how much rain or sun there is, what pests appear, and ultimately, how much rice blossoms, that depends on conditions. He cannot control everything, but he knows that having done his best, his heart will be at peace. If the harvest is abundant, he is grateful to heaven and earth. If the harvest fails, he learns to get up and continue planting for the next season. That is the spirit of adapting to circumstances. In modern life, it's the same for us. We love someone sincerely, pouring our hearts into nurturing that relationship. But if one day that person leaves, instead of blaming or resenting, we should smile and accept that the connection has run its course, that love has completed its cycle. Hold on to the beautiful things in your heart, then gently let go so your mind can be at peace. Only then can you open the door to a new journey. When we learn to live in harmony with circumstances, we are no longer bound by losses. Our mind becomes free, like a river flowing downstream. It flows around rocks, gently over rapids. It spreads wide across plains. Adapting to circumstances is knowing how to adjust oneself to life while still maintaining the purity and clarity of the soul. That is the art of living peacefully, the secret to always having a light heart. There was a woman in the village whose husband died young, and she raised 3 children alone. In the early days, she lived in self-pity, constantly lamenting unfair fate, feeling that her life was full of loss. But then, after countless tears, she suddenly realized that complaining wouldn't change anything. She chose to live in harmony with circumstances. She worked diligently, raised her children, and sent them to school, accepting her hardships as part of her destiny. Time passed. Her children grew up, each one filial and successful. She looked back and saw that life, despite its past pains, had also bestowed precious things upon her. She smiled, understanding that it was by letting go of resentment and choosing to live in harmony with circumstances that she found peace in her soul. If each of us knew how to live in harmony with circumstances, every life event would become a valuable lesson. When successful, we are grateful. When we fail, we learn. When loved, we cherish it. When hurt, we know to let go to grow. Living in harmony with circumstances is an art of transforming suffering into peace. Dear friend, try once to sit very still, close your eyes, and breathe deeply. In that breath, remind yourself that what is yours will stay. What is not yours, even if you try to hold on to it, will be lost. Practicing breath like that, every day you will feel your heart gradually lighten, no longer burdened by too much worry or fear. When our mind is light, happiness will naturally visit. And remember, adapting to circumstances is not about being passive, but about living wholeheartedly in every moment. When we have given our whole heart, whatever the outcome, it is complete. Don't worry too much about tomorrow, because today is the most precious gift. Let go of the burden of the past. Don't rush to grasp the future, but live peacefully in the present. Only then can we truly touch happiness. Ultimately, the great lesson we learn is that life is like a long river. Sometimes it's calm and clear. Sometimes it encounters rapids. Sometimes it's crystal clear. Sometimes it's murky. We cannot change its flow. But we can choose to let ourselves drift gently, flowing with circumstances so as not to be overwhelmed by fierce waves. Because happiness lies not in how much we hold on to, but in how much we can let go. When the heart is light, life naturally becomes peaceful. Perhaps in life, each of us has at least once felt hurt by comparison, grown weary of trivial things, or felt bitter due to an unfavorable word. Many people, carrying resentment in their hearts, find life burdensome, seeing injustice everywhere. However, if we quiet down a bit and ask ourselves if we are lacking sincerity, lacking forgiveness, and lacking forbearance, because happiness doesn't come from being slightly better than someone else, nor from proving ourselves right. True happiness only comes when we know how to live beautifully, how to love, and how to open our hearts. Living beautifully isn't something too far-fetched. It starts with the simplest actions: a sincere smile, a thank you, a handshake, a comforting hug. A person who lives beautifully doesn't necessarily have to be rich or successful, but rather lives in a way that makes others' hearts feel warm when they remember them. The Buddha once taught that wise people do not compete to win, because they know that everything is ultimately illusory. If we listen carefully to that teaching, we will see that yielding is not weakness, but a great kind of wisdom. A person who yields knows what is important and what is merely fleeting. In busy times, perhaps it's easy for us to choose the path of anger over gentleness, judgment over listening, resentment over forgiveness. But have we ever asked ourselves who we are holding on to resentment for? What purpose does it serve? In truth, forgiveness is not a gift we give to others. Forgiveness is a gift we give to ourselves. When we forgive, we put down the burden we've carried for so long, making space in our hearts for peace to reside. There's a small story that leaves much to ponder. In a poor countryside, there was a young man named Nam. One afternoon, on his way home from work, Nam accidentally picked up a thick wallet that had fallen by the roadside. When he opened it, inside was a large sum of money. For Nam, at that time, it was enough to cover many accumulating difficulties. The thought of keeping it briefly crossed his mind, as his life was inherently not easy. However, after much deliberation, he remembered his mother's advice from childhood. In life, wealth can be lost, but once integrity is lost, nothing can compensate for it. Nam decided to wait for the person who had lost it to return and look for it. A moment later, a middle-aged man rushed over, looking distraught, his eyes red and swollen. When Nam returned the wallet, the man tremblingly took it, and tears welled up. It turned out that the money was all he had saved to take his wife for medical treatment. If it were lost, his family would probably fall into despair. The man knelt to thank him, but Nam just bowed slightly and said, "I only did what anyone should do." The story didn't end there. Sometime later, Nam struggled to find work in the big city. Coincidentally, the man from that day was the owner of a small workshop. When he learned Nam was unemployed, he hired him. From then on, Nam had a stable job and gradually could support his family. It turned out that returning the wallet that year became the karmic connection that led him to a better path. The story of Nam finding the wallet might be just a small piece in life, but it reflects a truth that the Buddha taught. Sow good seeds, reap good fruits. We don't know when that seed will sprout, but it will certainly blossom at the right time. Because living with integrity is never a loss, sincerity is never meaningless, and forgiveness is always the door to peace. If your heart still holds resentment towards someone, try once to close your eyes, breathe deeply, and whisper, "I forgive this person, so that I may be at peace." For just as murky water cannot reflect the clouds or the moon, when we let the mud settle, when forgiveness clarifies it, the water naturally becomes bright and clear, and our hearts naturally open wide. Living beautifully also means knowing how to yield. People often mistakenly believe that yielding is weakness. But how many know that to be able to yield, one must possess great inner strength? Yielding is not because we lack the strength to resist, but because we know we don't need to compete. A person who chooses to yield is someone who knows that peace is more valuable than winning or losing. Imagine in a family, if everyone wanted to be right, everyone wanted to be superior, would that home still have laughter? Conversely, if just one person knows how to calm down and take a step back, happiness will blossom. The Buddha taught that hatred cannot extinguish hatred. Only compassion can extinguish hatred. That teaching still holds its full value today. If we choose to live beautifully, sincerely, kindly, and with forgiveness, then no matter how turbulent life becomes, we will find our minds not swept away. Because we know that living beautifully isn't about being recognized by anyone, but about our own mind being at peace. And peace is the foundation of happiness. Dear friend, amidst life's hurried pace, when people constantly chase fame and endlessly compare and compete, it is precisely when you choose to live sincerely that you walk a different path, the path of peace. Let every word you utter carry the energy of love. Let every action you take sow seeds of kindness. Let your heart not be closed off by hatred. Then you will see that you are the one who receives the greatest gift. That gift cannot be bought with money, nor can anyone give it to you, but yourself. It is the gift of peace, of inner freedom, of simple happiness. And then you will understand that choosing to live beautifully is choosing to live happily. Because happiness doesn't come from comparison, nor from proving yourself superior to others. Happiness comes from knowing how to feel with the heart, knowing how to forgive, to let go, knowing how to be kind, to sow good seeds, knowing how to yield, to nurture peace. At that point, life is no longer a tiresome race, but a sacred journey for us to learn to love and cherish every impermanent moment. Have you ever felt your heart heavy just because of a fleeting conversation? Sometimes someone else's unintentional words can be like a sharp needle piercing our hearts, causing us to cling to sadness for many days. Then we repeat them in our minds like an endless refrain, so that each time we think back, the wound deepens. Many people live their entire lives just remembering what hurt them, forgetting that true peace doesn't come from holding on, but from the ability to let go. Peace doesn't come from arguments about right or wrong, or from comparisons of who is better. It only appears when we know how to return to our own minds, nurturing it with present moment awareness. There's one thing in the Buddha's teachings I want to reiterate here. If a person holds on to resentment in their heart, it's like holding a burning coal, wanting to throw it at someone else. Before the other person gets burned, your own hand has already been scorched. We often don't realize that when we allow negative dialogues to linger in our minds, we are the ones who hurt ourselves. The more we remember, analyze, and repeat, the more the fire of hatred flares, burning away our inherent peace. Therefore, the first thing to maintain a peaceful soul is to learn how to avoid unnecessary conversations. If a conversation only causes worry and distress, we can smile, listen just enough, and then choose silence. For silence is also a form of wisdom. Imagine a peaceful afternoon in a rural village. A farmer returns home after a day in the fields, carrying a bundle of rice stalks, his heart light because of a good harvest. However, if on his way he stops to argue with a neighbor about an old matter from many years ago, wouldn't half of that joy be lost? Life is short. The things we plant in our minds will be seeds for peace or suffering. If we choose to nurture seeds of argument, tomorrow our hearts will be overgrown with weeds. But if we choose to plant seeds of forgiveness, tomorrow the field of our soul will blossom. And forgiveness, difficult as it may be, is a crucial secret to keeping our hearts at peace. Forgiveness doesn't mean denying the past or condoning mistakes, but rather giving ourselves the chance to be at ease. When we cling tightly to resentment, we imprison ourselves in an invisible cage. When we let go, we step out ourselves and see the wide-open blue sky. Forgiveness is a healing medicine for both the one forgiven and the one who forgives. Someone once asked a Zen master, "If someone hurts me too many times, do I still need to forgive them?" The Zen master just smiled and said, "You forgive not for them, but for yourself." Forgiveness is the key that opens the door to freedom, and that door is for you to walk through, not for them. In life, we have all experienced loss and been hurt by someone. But if we only cling to the past, we will be like someone walking through a forest, tightly holding a thorny branch. Every step draws blood, yet we refuse to let go. Peace only comes when we learn to be patient with ourselves, knowing that the past is over. The future has not yet arrived, and the present is the most precious gift we have. That's why in the Dhammapada there is a verse, "There is no fire like craving, no chain like hatred, and no river that flows like the human mind." If we do not know how to master our minds, we will forever be swept away into endless shores of suffering. But if we focus on the present, on each breath, each step, we will realize that peace has never left us. There's a simple yet profound story about a woman and an empty cup. This woman clung to her sorrows, feeling restless every day, never sleeping peacefully. She sought out a Zen master and recounted all her sufferings. The Zen master silently poured her a full cup of water and then said, "Try pouring more in." The woman shook her head. "The cup is full. I can't pour any more." The Zen master smiled. "Your mind is the same. When you hold on to too much worry, anger, and suffering, even if peace comes, there's no room for it to stay. To have peace, you must first learn to let go of some things." The woman then had an awakening, realizing that the empty cup symbolized a peaceful mind. To have a peaceful mind, one must know how to let go. To be happy, one must learn to gently release the past. And the lesson from this empty cup is also a reminder for all of us not to fill our minds with negative things. Every day, practice walking meditation, relaxing to listen to each footstep touching the ground, listening to your breath entering and leaving your chest. When we walk in mindfulness, we see the blue sky and white clouds become our confidantes. When we sit quietly and hear birds sing, or the wind gently rustle through branches, we understand that peace is not far away, but is the complete presence in this very moment. Every day, just spending a few minutes sitting down, breathing gently, and smiling, we plant another seed of peace in our souls. If this life is likened to a garden, then our soul is the soil. Whatever seeds we sow, we will harvest its fruits. Avoiding negative conversations, forgiving mistakes, being patient with ourselves, knowing how to let go of the past, and practicing walking meditation are the 5 precious seeds to plant in the garden of peace. And every day, if we just tend to it with mindfulness, the garden will be lush, full of flowers and fruits. Dear friend, true happiness doesn't come from comparison or from external things. Happiness comes from knowing how to stop, how to feel, how to love, and how to appreciate. Whenever your heart is troubled, remember the image of the empty cup. When your mind is too full, ask yourself what you can let go of for peace to return. For peace is not a place to seek, but a state of mind to return to. And only when we return to living in the present do we truly see that happiness has always been right here. Perhaps deep down in everyone's heart, we've all, at least once, quietly wondered, when will I truly be happy? When will my life become as light and joyful as others? That question seems so ordinary, yet it weighs heavily on countless hearts, because we are often accustomed to waiting for someone or something to come and make us happy. We wait for a compliment to feel valuable. We wait for a look of care to feel loved. We wait for success to tell ourselves that life is fair after all. But the more we wait, the more disheartened and empty we feel, because happiness never comes from waiting. Happiness, ultimately, is something we must sow and nurture ourselves from within our hearts. The Buddha taught that one is one's own refuge. One should rely on oneself and seek no other refuge. That saying is simple, but contains a great truth. Happiness is not a gift bestowed by others, but a seed we must sow ourselves in daily life. A person who knows how to sow seeds of happiness will find peace and joy blossoming in every moment. But one who only waits will forever wander in a desert of longing. There was a young girl living in a peaceful village. She was naturally gentle and hardworking, but from childhood, she always carried a sense of inferiority in her heart. She saw her friends praised by their parents, saw people around her experiencing joy and receiving affection, and she felt an emptiness in her heart. Day after day, she waited for something to happen. She waited for someone to make her happy, waited for a special affection, waited for a loving glance. But the more she waited, the more exhausted she became, because no one was strong enough to fill the void in her heart. One afternoon, as the sun slowly set, casting a soft golden light over the ripened rice fields, she inadvertently caught sight of her reflection in a mirror. It was an old mirror, faded with the years. She stood silent for a long moment, then softly chuckled. That smile was for no one but herself. It was hesitant at first, then gradually became natural and warm. She saw something in her own eyes that had long been forgotten: gentleness. That day, she decided to try something new. Every day, instead of waiting for others to make her happy, she would practice smiling at herself. The next day, she brought that smile to others. She greeted an elderly neighbor with cheerfulness. She smiled at a child playing in the alley. She gave a kind look to the vendor at the market. A strange thing happened. The joy from those smiles reflected back, illuminating her own heart. From then on, she no longer felt small or lacking. She realized that true happiness never lay in someone else bringing it to her, but in her sowing joy for others, starting with her own smile. That story is like a cool breeze on a sweltering summer afternoon. It reminds us that happiness isn't a destination at the end of the road, but every step we take along the way. If we tirelessly wait to be happy one day, our entire lives might only be spent in anticipation. But if right now we learn to smile, to see beauty in every moment, then we already have happiness. There is one thing the Buddha always reminds us of: to return and take refuge in oneself. One who lives in mindfulness will see that every breath is a gift. Every day waking up is a blessing. Every evening seeing the sunset is a miracle. Happiness is not far away. It's right there when we know how to breathe deeply, how to smile gently, how to give joy without expecting anything in return. Have you ever tried standing in front of a mirror and smiling at yourself? It sounds simple, but it's an incredibly effective soul-healing exercise. Because when you dare to smile at yourself, you acknowledge that you deserve happiness, that you don't need anyone's approval. And then, from that smile, you can step out and offer smiles to others. The miracle is that when you give, you lose nothing. On the contrary, it multiplies manifold for you. Imagine one morning you wake up, open the window, and breathe in a cool, fresh breeze. You smile at yourself, then smile at the bright dawn outside. You go to the market to buy a bunch of vegetables, and you smile at the vendor. That smile makes her feel warm, and she smiles back at you. And so, that small joy spreads, touching others. And you realize how meaningful your day has become. The Buddha once taught that if hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of people smiled together, this world would be much more peaceful. That saying isn't just for pleasant listening. It's a reminder. We don't need to do anything grand. Simply sowing joy with a smile, with a kind glance, is a way to create happiness for ourselves and for others. Some people say, "I'm suffering too much. How can I smile?" But in reality, smiling isn't because you've stopped suffering, but a remedy to help lessen your suffering. It's like when you're tired. A cool glass of water doesn't make hard work disappear, but it gives you a moment of respite to rejuvenate. Similarly, a smile doesn't dissolve all suffering, but it helps your heart find space to breathe, finds light to move forward. So don't wait for someone to bring you happiness. Start with something small, like today's exercise. Stand in front of a mirror, smile at yourself, and tell yourself, "I deserve to be happy. I will carry this smile and sow it throughout the world." You will see that in just a few days, your soul will be different, lighter, warmer, more liberated. And from that practice, you will gradually understand a truth. Happiness is not something far away. It is right there in the breath you inhale and exhale. It is in the dewdrops sparkling on leaves in the early morning. It is in the bird song outside your porch. It is in the kind gaze of a passerby. And most importantly, it is in your heart, if you know how to plant and nurture it. This life is impermanent. Nothing lasts forever. The things we are waiting for may come, or they may not. But in every present moment, if we know how to smile, how to sow joy, then we already possess true happiness. Those who know how to create their own happiness never have to live in anticipation. Those who know how to sow joy will find flowers blooming in their hearts wherever they go. Therefore, the lesson from the story of the girl smiling in the mirror is a message for all of us. Start today, this very moment, to create happiness for yourself. Don't wait any longer, because happiness isn't something far away, but something you can grasp right now by returning to your heart. And when you know how to create your own happiness, you will become a source of light for those around you, so that joy spreads and multiplies, becoming a never-ending current. Remember that human life is short. Wishing for too much only adds to weariness. Instead of waiting, plant. Instead of blaming, smile. Instead of searching outside, turn inward. Happiness is nowhere else. It is right in this moment, in a heart that knows how to smile and knows how to share. And when you truly feel that, you will see that life's journey is not long at all, because every step you take is already peace. Every breath you take is already happiness. Dear friend, in this life, perhaps each of us has at some point yearned for something perfect. We want a complete family, a smooth career, an ideal partner, or simply a flawless item. Yet life doesn't always unfold according to our desires. When faced with imperfection, we often feel disheartened, annoyed, and sometimes even blame fate. But the more changes we go through, the more we realize that it is precisely imperfection that creates life's unique beauty. Life is inherently relative, and it is only when we learn to accept this relativity that our minds truly find peace and freedom. There is a gentle yet profound saying, "One who knows how to bow will not hit the door frame. One who knows how to yield will find the sky and sea open wide." It sounds simple, but contains a whole truth for living. People often tirelessly compete, wanting everything to go their way, wanting life to be perfectly smooth and complete. But the Buddha taught that all phenomena are impermanent. Nothing lasts forever, and nothing is absolutely perfect. Therefore, anyone who knows how to humble their ego, how to yield a step, will open up a whole sky of peace. I want to tell you a small story, seemingly very ordinary, but containing a profound lesson. In a poor rural village, there lived a farmer who had a porcelain cup in his home. That cup was a wedding gift, tied to many warm memories. However, one time, by accident, the rim of the cup chipped. From then on, he no longer wanted to use it. Every time he saw the cup, he would sigh sadly, annoyed that it was no longer whole. He blamed himself for his carelessness. He regretted that a once beautiful item had become flawed. Day after day, he still kept the cup in a corner of the cabinet as a useless item. One day, during the wild flower season, his young daughter picked a yellow blossom and brought it home. Unable to find a vase, the little girl took that chipped porcelain cup and placed the flower in it. When the farmer returned home, he was surprised to see the flower glowing in the cup he once despised. He stood in a daze for a long time. It turned out that although the cup was no longer perfect, it could still shine in its own way. And sometimes it is precisely that imperfection that creates a simple, genuine beauty. That moment awakened him. He realized that human life is also like that cup. None of us are complete. No circumstance is perfect. There are losses, cracks, and shortcomings in life. But if we know how to change our perspective, we will see that even in imperfection, there is beauty. Sometimes a very unique beauty that perfection might not necessarily offer. In the Samyutta Nikaya, the Buddha once taught that just as a lotus growing in mud still rises to diffuse its pure fragrance, humans can also realize peace from suffering and find value from imperfection. Indeed, life is like a mirror with a few scratches, a piece of music with silent notes, a river with winding bends. It is precisely these things that create richness and depth in life. If we constantly cling to the image of perfection, we will become tired and disappointed. But when we accept relativity, we feel our hearts lighten, peaceful, like a bird flying in the wide sky. The Lin Ung Buddhist channel knows there are times when you feel like that chipped porcelain cup, carrying many wounds, many losses in your heart. Perhaps you've failed in a relationship, stumbled in your career, lost a loved one. You blame yourself for not being good enough, not being complete enough. But dear friend, remember that even the moon has scars, flowers have faded petals, and the ocean has turbulent days. So why do we insist on being perfect? The important thing isn't the chip on the cup, but whether we appreciate its new purpose. The important thing isn't the cracks in life, but whether we see the light filtering through those cracks. We can practice in very simple ways. Whenever you feel disappointed by your own shortcomings or those of others, stop and take a deep breath. Look at the vast sky. You'll see clouds still moving, the sun still shining, life still going on. At that moment, tell yourself that life is inherently imperfect, and what you need is to open your heart to embrace it in its relativity. You can also try meditating on imperfection by sitting still, relaxing, thinking about the flaws you once blamed yourself for. Then gently whisper, "I accept. I love even what is incomplete." That statement is like a healing medicine that helps us let go of the burden of perfectionism. If one day you feel lost, remember the story of the chipped cup. Try to change your perspective. Instead of complaining, find a new use, a new viewpoint. Because sometimes imperfection is the beginning of a new beauty. One who knows how to accept the relativity of life is one who knows how to open the door to joy for themselves. And dear friend, in this journey, we don't need to become perfect. We just need to learn how to love amidst imperfection. Like a wild flower still blooming by the roadside, needing no one's approval, yet still vibrant. Like a winding river that still flows to the sea. Like us humans, who may not be perfect, but still deserve to be loved and cherished. Engrave in your heart that happiness doesn't come from comparison, nor does it lie in absolute perfection. Happiness is when we learn to accept relativity and know how to use our hearts to feel the simple beauty in every moment. Only then does life truly become peaceful. Dear friend, in life's endless current, have you ever felt that you've given too much and forgotten yourself? Have you ever found yourself feeling disheartened, hurt, and weary because you constantly chase after comparisons and others' approval, without once sitting down in true stillness to ask your heart, have I loved myself yet? People often easily give love, pouring their hearts out for family, friends, even strangers, but find it difficult to learn how to love and cherish themselves. Yet, in reality, if you don't know how to love yourself, all the love you give to others will only be like a passing breeze, unable to last. In the teachings of the Buddha, he once taught that oneself is one's closest relative. No one can save us but ourselves. That teaching is not meant to encourage selfishness, but to remind us that to be able to love and help others, we must first know how to nourish ourselves. For how can an empty pitcher pour water for others to drink? Similarly, a heart full of wounds, if it doesn't know how to heal itself, sometimes only transmits more pain when it tries to give love. There was a woman who went through a broken marriage. On the day of her divorce, she felt as if her whole world had collapsed beneath her feet. She thought she was useless, undeserving of love, and blamed herself, thinking that if she had been smarter, if she had known how to preserve things better, perhaps her husband wouldn't have left. Every evening, in her small room, she cried until her tears ran dry, feeling only emptiness in her heart. Everyone around her advised her to be strong, to get up, but her heart had no strength left. During that time, she lived like a lost shadow amidst life's current. Then, one afternoon, as she sat watching the flower petals fall on the porch, she suddenly remembered the Buddha's teaching about impermanence. No matter how beautiful that flower was, it would eventually wither. But in its blooming moment, it lived fully, radiating fragrance and beauty. And didn't she still have a whole life ahead of her? A broken marriage isn't the end. It's just a connection that has completed its cycle, now closing to make way for a new one. From that moment, she began to practice self-care, starting with small things. She cooked herself a delicious meal, went for walks in the early sun, bought a small potted flower for her room. Each act, though small, gradually made her feel that she deserved to be loved, deserved to be cared for. Then she remembered her passion for painting from her youth. After years of being busy with family, she hadn't touched a paintbrush once. So she bought paper and paints and began to practice simple strokes. At first, she was clumsy, but gradually, in her brush strokes, she found stillness. She realized that as her hand followed each color of her soul, her mind also gradually returned to peace. When old friends saw her paintings, they praised and encouraged her, and she spontaneously felt her self-confidence revive. From someone who once considered herself useless, she gradually understood that her self-worth didn't depend on anyone, nor did it lie in the approval of her ex-husband, friends, or society. That value lay right within herself, in how she treated herself. And when she learned to love herself, she also learned how to love others more completely, no longer clinging, no longer demanding reciprocity, but with a broad, compassionate love. You see, failure and hurt are not frightening. The most frightening thing is when we abandon faith in ourselves. When we lose that faith, we not only lose the strength to get back up, but also lose the opportunity for happiness. The Buddha taught that within every human heart, there is a seed of enlightenment, the ability to self-heal. Just as a lotus seed grows from muddy depths but rises pure, we too can pass through suffering to bloom in serenity. Try looking back at yourself. Do you often blame or criticize yourself for not being good enough? Not beautiful enough? Not successful enough? Do you ever place your expectations on others' opinions and then feel disappointed when they aren't met? If so, pause for a moment. Close your eyes and close your eyes.